Chapter 1, Daddy, Please Don't Go. Marcus Turner had always believed mornings told the truth about a family. The way the house woke up, the rhythm of footsteps, the smell of coffee drifting through quiet rooms. If something was wrong, you could feel it before you could name it. That morning, the truth came wrapped around his leg. "Daddy," Spencer whispered, his small fingers clutching the fabric of Marcus's suit pants like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Please don't go." Marcus paused mid-step, his briefcase still leaning against the wall where he'd set it down. He looked down at his son, 5 years old, pajama shirt twisted, hair sticking up in the back from restless sleep. Spencer's face was already wet with tears, his lower lip trembling as though he'd been fighting them for a while and finally lost. Marcus crouched immediately, instinctively. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, placing his hands on Spencer's shoulders. "What's going on?" Spencer shook his head hard, eyes squeezing shut as another sob broke loose. "I don't want you to go to work." A familiar sentence. Too familiar. Marcus forced a smile, gentle and practiced. "I have to go to work, champ. You know that. I'll be back before dinner. We can do pizza tonight, okay?" Spencer didn't respond to the promise. Instead, his grip tightened. "They come when you're not here." The words landed heavier than they should have. Marcus felt it, a subtle hitch in his breath, a moment where the normal explanations didn't line up fast enough. "Who comes?" Marcus asked carefully. Spencer buried his face against Marcus's chest. His voice was muffled, but the fear in it was unmistakable. "Them." Marcus glanced toward the hallway, toward the bedroom door, where Rachel was still getting ready for her shift at the hospital. He lowered his voice. "Buddy, are you having bad dreams again?" Spencer shook his head violently. "No, I'm awake. I see them." Marcus swallowed. "See who?" Spencer lifted his head then, just enough for Marcus to see his eyes. They were red-rimmed, exhausted, carrying something no child's eyes should. "Grandpa says not to tell." Marcus felt a cold line draw itself down his spine. "Grandpa," he repeated. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Rachel appeared, already in scrubs, hair pulled back, coffee mug in hand. "What's going on?" she asked, tired but distracted. "He doesn't want me to leave," Marcus said, standing and lifting Spencer into his arms. Spencer clung to him instantly, arms locked around his neck. Rachel sighed, the sound heavy with too many early mornings. "Spence, honey, Daddy goes to work every day. You're safe. Grandpa and Grandma are just helping out, remember?" Spencer's face turned inward again, pressing into Marcus's shoulder. "I don't like when they help." Rachel frowned, but only briefly. "Sweetie, that's not nice." Marcus looked at her. He said. Rachel waved it off gently. "He's 5, Marcus. He's been having nightmares all week. New school, long days, me being gone more, it's stress." He said he sees them. Marcus insisted quietly. Rachel's jaw tightened. "Marcus!" The tone was a warning. "Not now. Not again." She stepped closer and brushed Spencer's hair back. "Baby, you're okay. Daddy has court today. He can't just stay home." Spencer pulled back enough to look at Marcus again. His voice dropped to a whisper. "They do scary things." Marcus felt his heart start to pound. "What kind of things?" Spencer hesitated. His eyes flicked toward Rachel, then back to Marcus. "I'm not supposed to say." Rachel straightened. "Okay, that's enough." She forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're upsetting yourself." Marcus held Spencer tighter. "Rachel, listen to him." She exhaled sharply. "I am listening. I just know when my child is overtired and scared. My parents are not monsters." Marcus didn't say what he was thinking. That fear like this didn't come from imagination alone. That Spencer had never been the kind of child who made things up. That there was a specificity in his terror that didn't feel like a dream. Instead, he kissed Spencer's temple. "I'll walk you to the bus later," he said softly. "Okay." Spencer didn't answer. He just nodded once, stiff and small. Rachel checked her watch. "I have to go," she said. "Dad said he'd come by later to make sure Spencer eats lunch." Marcus's mouth went dry. "He has a key now?" Rachel paused. "Yes, I told you that." "You didn't tell me when," Marcus said. "Marcus," she said again, firmer this time. "He's helping. I can't be everywhere." Marcus looked down at Spencer, who had gone completely still. Please don't go, Spencer whispered again. Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, the house felt different. Quieter. Watching. I'll see you tonight, he said to Rachel. She kissed his cheek absently and left, the door clicking shut behind her. Marcus stayed where he was, Spencer still in his arms, listening to the silence settle back into the house. Buddy, Marcus said after a moment. When do they come? Spencer hesitated. After you leave. And where do you go when they come? Spencer's fingers twisted into Marcus's collar. My room. Marcus nodded slowly. Do they come every day? Spencer nodded too. Do they ever come when I'm here? Spencer shook his head. They wait. Marcus's chest tightened. He didn't know what he was afraid of yet. Only that something was very wrong. He set Spencer down gently. Go sit at the table. I'll make you breakfast. As Spencer walked away, Marcus stayed frozen in place for a moment longer, staring at the front door. At the lock. At the quiet certainty settling into his bones. This wasn't separation anxiety. This wasn't imagination. And for the first time since becoming a father, Marcus Turner felt the unmistakable fear that the danger wasn't outside the house. It was already inside. Chapter 2, The Key I Never Gave. The thought wouldn't leave Marcus alone. It followed him through traffic, through the quiet corridors of the courthouse, through meetings he barely heard. It sat beside him while he stared at legal briefs without reading a word. The same week. Spencer's fear had started the same week Abraham Lehman got a key to the house. Marcus hadn't noticed it at first. Why would he? Life didn't announce turning points. It disguised them as conveniences, as help. That evening, Marcus sat at the kitchen table long after dinner, his laptop closed, his coffee cold. The house was quiet except for the muted hum of the dishwasher and the faint sound of Spencer's breathing down the hall. Rachel moved around the kitchen, packing her lunch for the next day. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders tight with the weight of too many shifts and too much family responsibility. Rachel, Marcus said carefully, when did you give her dad a key? She didn't look up. I told you. A couple weeks ago. No, Marcus said. When exactly? She paused, clearly annoyed now. Why does that matter? Just answer me. She sighed and set the container down a little harder than necessary. The Monday after my night shift went late. I couldn't get back in time for Spencer. Dad offered. He's my father, Marcus. Marcus nodded slowly, his mind already lining things up. That was the same week Spencer started crying every morning. Rachel finally turned toward him. You're connecting things that don't connect. Am I? Marcus asked quietly. Because before that, Spencer never begged me not to leave. He never said things like, he's 5. Rachel snapped. 5-year-olds say things. Not like this. Rachel crossed her arms. You don't like my parents. You never have. That's not true. It is, she said. You tolerate them. Barely. Marcus leaned forward. I don't dislike your father. I don't trust him. Rachel let out a sharp laugh. Based on what? He volunteers at church. He watches his grandson. He's raised 3 kids. Marcus's jaw tightened. Images rose unbidden. Small moments he'd brushed aside at the time. Abraham crouching too close to Spencer, his hand lingering on the boy's back just a second too long. The way Abraham always insisted on being the one to help Spencer change, even when Marcus was right there. Questions that felt invasive. Does he ever touch himself? Does he sleep through the night? Is he a cuddler or more independent? At the time, Marcus had told himself it was just awkward curiosity, an old man trying too hard to be involved. Now it felt different. Marcus, Rachel said sharply, say what you're thinking. He hesitated. The words felt dangerous. Once spoken, they couldn't be pulled back. I think your dad is too interested in Spencer, he said. Rachel stared at him like he'd slapped her. Excuse me? I think he crosses boundaries, Marcus continued, forcing himself to keep going. I think he asks questions that aren't appropriate. I think he watches Spencer like, stop. Her voice was shaking now. You're implying something disgusting. I'm saying I'm uncomfortable. No, she said. You're projecting. Rachel, my father helped raise me when my mother was sick, she said, her voice rising. He took care of my siblings. He has never hurt anyone. Marcus stood. You don't know that. Her eyes flashed. How dare you? Silence crashed between them. From the hallway, Spencer's door creaked open. He stood there, small and uncertain. Mom! Rachel's expression softened instantly. Hey, baby, go back to bed. Spencer glanced at Marcus, then back at Rachel. Is Grandpa coming tomorrow? Marcus felt his stomach drop. Rachel answered too quickly. Maybe, if Mommy works late. Spencer nodded, but his shoulders slumped. He shuffled back to his room without another word. Marcus watched him disappear. You see that, he said quietly. He's afraid. He's tired, Rachel said. And you're putting ideas in his head. Marcus shook his head. I haven't told him anything. You don't have to, she replied. Kids sensed tension. Marcus turned away, pressing his hands flat against the counter. I want the key back. Rachel stiffened. No, I want it back, he repeated. Until we figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. There is for me. Rachel stepped closer, her voice low and furious. You're not accusing my father of something like that. Not without proof. I'm not accusing, Marcus said. I'm protecting. She scoffed. From what? Your imagination? Marcus turned to face her. From the possibility that we're wrong. Rachel's eyes filled with angry tears. You're being paranoid and disrespectful. He took a breath. I'd rather be paranoid than careless. That's easy for you to say, she snapped. You're not the one whose family you're tearing apart. Marcus didn't answer, because suddenly, painfully, he understood something. Rachel wasn't listening. She couldn't. Her loyalty was already decided. Her denial was armor she wasn't ready to take off. Marcus looked down the hallway again, toward Spencer's room, toward the small shape lying awake in the dark. And in that moment, with the house quiet and his marriage suddenly fragile, Marcus realized something that terrified him more than any accusation he could make. No one was protecting his son but him. Chapter 3, I called in sick. Marcus had never lied to his office before. He stared at his phone in the dim light of the kitchen, thumb hovering over his supervisor's name. The clock above the stove read 6:42 a.m. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Spencer shifting in his bed. This was the hour Marcus usually loved, the calm before the day started asking things of him. Today, it felt like standing on the edge of something unstable. He inhaled and pressed call. Marcus, his supervisor answered, voice still rough with sleep. Everything okay? No, Marcus said, surprising himself with the honesty in his tone. He forced it steadier. I'm not feeling well. I need to take a sick day. There was a pause. You've got that hearing this afternoon. I know. Another pause. This isn't like you. I know. Marcus repeated. His supervisor sighed. Take the day. Feel better. Marcus ended the call and set the phone down slowly, like it might make noise if he wasn't careful. His heart was already beating too fast. He stood there for a moment, staring at the blank screen, feeling the weight of what he'd just done settle into his chest. He hadn't told Rachel. He wasn't going to. Upstairs, Spencer's door creaked open. Marcus turned just as his son stepped into the hallway, rubbing one eye with a fist. Daddy, Spencer whispered. Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of him. Hey, buddy, you're not dressed, Spencer said, noticing immediately. Marcus smiled gently. I'm working from home today. Spencer's shoulders relaxed, just a fraction, but Marcus saw it. Felt it. Really? Really? Spencer nodded, then hesitated. Will you still be here? Yes, Marcus said, without hesitation. All day. Spencer reached out and wrapped his arms around Marcus's neck. Marcus held him longer than usual, breathing in the familiar scent of shampoo and sleep. Okay, Spencer murmured. Rachel came down the stairs a few minutes later, already dressed for her shift. She looked surprised to see Marcus still in a t-shirt and jeans. Aren't you late? She asked. I'm working from home, Marcus said evenly. She frowned. Since when? Since this morning. She studied him for a moment. You didn't tell me. I didn't want to wake you. Rachel glanced at the clock. That hearing, I've got it covered, Marcus said. I need to stay close today. She didn't like that answer, but she was already tired, already thinking about her day. Fine, she said. Dad said he'd stop by later anyway. So, Marcus's jaw tightened. I'll handle Spencer. Rachel hesitated, then shrugged. Okay, I have to go. She kissed Spencer's head, grabbed her bag, and left. The door closed behind her with a soft final click. Marcus stood still long after she was gone. He waited until Spencer was settled at the table with his cereal before moving again. Then he went to the guest room at the end of the hall, the one no one ever used except when Rachel's parents visited. He closed the door quietly. The room smelled faintly of old books and linen. Marcus pulled the curtains just enough to let light in without revealing the room from outside. He placed his phone on the nightstand, screen facing up, recording app open. He set a small voice recorder beside it, one he'd once used to dictate notes for work. His hands were steady, but his pulse wasn't. He sat on the edge of the bed and listened. The house sounded different when you were hiding inside it. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant car passing, every tick of the wall clock grew louder, sharper. From down the hall, he could hear Spencer humming softly to himself as he ate breakfast. Marcus closed his eyes and fought the urge to go back out there, to sit at the table and pretend this was just another day. He reminded himself why he was here. Proof, not suspicion. Minutes passed, then more. Marcus checked the time on his phone. 8:15 a.m. He shifted positions, the mattress sign beneath him. He froze, listening, heart hammering until he realized the sound hadn't traveled beyond the room. Down the hall, Spencer's chair scraped against the floor. "Daddy, I'm here," Marcus called, forcing his voice to sound normal. "Can I watch cartoons?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Just stay in the living room." "Okay." The TV clicked on. Bright voices filled the house, cheerful and wrong. Marcus leaned back against the headboard, eyes fixed on the door. He replayed everything Spencer had said. The timing, the fear, the name he wasn't supposed to say. Grandpa says not to tell. At 8:58, Marcus's phone vibrated softly. A text from Rachel. Dad might stop by around 10. Just a heads up. Marcus stared at the screen until it dimmed. He started the recorder. 9.12, footsteps outside. A neighbor's car door slammed. Marcus's breath hitched, then steadied. 9.26, Spencer laughed at something on TV. Marcus felt a sharp, aching tenderness that almost undid him. 9.41, silence again. Marcus wiped his palms on his jeans. His mouth was dry. He stood, then sat again, then stood, careful not to make a sound. He positioned himself just behind the door, phone in hand. His heart was pounding so loudly he was sure it could be heard down the hall. If nothing happens, he told himself, you apologize. You get help. You admit you were wrong. The clock ticked on. Then, 9:47 a.m. The sound was small, precise, unmistakable. The front door lock clicked. Chapter 4, the duffel bag. The lock clicked again. Marcus opened the guest room door, just enough to see the hallway. His phone was already in his hand, recording. The red dot a small, furious eye. His pulse thudded so hard he tasted metal. The front door opened. Abraham Lehman stepped inside like he owned the place. No hesitation. No pause to announce himself. No calling out for Spencer or asking where Rachel was. He shut the door softly behind him, careful, practiced, and Marcus felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. Abraham was carrying a black duffel bag. Not a grocery bag, not a briefcase. A duffel, heavy, sagging in the middle, the zipper slightly strained. It hung from Abraham's shoulder as he turned and walked straight down the hallway. Towards Spencer's room. Marcus stepped out. Abraham. The sound of Marcus's voice cut the air like a snapped wire. Abraham froze. Slowly, he turned. His face went slack with surprise for half a second, just long enough for Marcus to see it, before it rearranged itself into something calmer. Something almost amused. "Marcus," Abraham said. "You're home." Marcus raised the phone higher. "You shouldn't be here." Abraham's eyes flicked to the phone. The color drained from his face. "I told you," Marcus continued, his voice steady despite the roar in his ears. "You don't have permission to come into my house when I'm here." Abraham smiled thinly. "Rachel asked me to check on Spencer." "No," Marcus said. "She didn't." Abraham adjusted the duffel bag on his shoulder. "You're overreacting." Marcus took a step forward. "What's in the bag?" Abraham didn't answer. From the living room, the TV laughed. A cartoon character shouted something cheerful and oblivious. "Put it down," Marcus said. Abraham's eyes darted down the hall, then back to Marcus. You're making a mistake. Put it down, Marcus repeated. Abraham hesitated. Then, slowly, he let the duffel bag slide off his shoulder. It hit the floor with a dull, heavy thud. The zipper split open on impact. The contents spilled out. Marcus felt the world tilt. A camera, professional, not cheap, rolled onto the carpet. Cables followed. Memory cards. A small tripod. Other items Marcus couldn't immediately name, but instinctively recoiled from. Abraham lunged forward, trying to shove everything back into the bag. Marcus didn't think. He moved. He kicked the bag away, sending it skidding down the hallway. Don't touch it. Abraham's mask cracked. You don't understand. Get away from my son. Spencer's door creaked open. Daddy. Marcus turned instantly. Spencer, stay where you are. But Spencer had already seen enough. His eyes locked onto Abraham, and his face collapsed into terror. Daddy, Spencer whispered, voice breaking. He's here. Abraham took a step toward the boy. Spencer, don't you say his name. Marcus snarled, stepping between them. You don't get to speak to him. Spencer pressed himself against the doorframe, shaking. I told you, he whispered. I told you they come. Marcus reached back without looking and felt Spencer's small hand latch onto his fingers like a lifeline. Marcus pulled him behind his legs. Get out, Marcus said to Abraham. Now. Abraham straightened, eyes hard now. You think this ends with you? Marcus backed up slowly, guiding Spencer away from the hallway. I think it ends with you in handcuffs. Abraham laughed, sharp and humorless. Who do you think they'll believe? Marcus raised the phone higher. I'm recording. Abraham's eyes flicked again, calculating. Then, abruptly, he turned and bolted for the door. Marcus didn't chase him. He slammed the front door shut instead, locked it, and grabbed Spencer up in his arms. Spencer wrapped himself around Marcus's neck, sobbing. It's okay, Marcus said, though his own hands were shaking. You're safe. You're safe. He dialed 911 with his free hand. My father-in-law is in my house, Marcus said when the dispatcher answered. He has recording equipment. My son is terrified. I need officers here now. Minutes stretched into something unreal. Abraham stood near the door, breathing hard, eyes darting between Marcus and the windows. He said nothing. Neither did Marcus. Sirens wailed in the distance. When the police burst through the door, Abraham tried to speak, tried to explain, but Marcus didn't hear a word of it. He felt Spencer being gently taken from his arms, wrapped in a blanket, guided toward the couch. Daddy, Spencer cried. I'm here, Marcus said immediately, kneeling in front of him. I'm right here. An officer spoke softly to Spencer. Can you tell us what happened, buddy? Spencer shook his head, tears streaming. He leaned into Marcus's chest and whispered, so quietly Marcus almost missed it. They've been coming for a long time. Marcus closed his eyes. Oh, sweetheart, the officer asked. Spencer's voice trembled. Grandpa, and others. Marcus felt his heart break open, sharp and final. They tell me not to cry, Spencer whispered. They say Daddy won't believe me. Marcus wrapped his arms around him, holding him as tightly as he dared. I believe you, Marcus said, his voice cracking. I always believe you. And in that moment, standing in his own hallway, surrounded by uniforms and spilled secrets, Marcus understood the full, unbearable truth. This hadn't just started. It had been happening for a long time, and it had never been just one person. Chapter 5, it was never just him. The house didn't feel like theirs anymore. It smelled like disinfectant and nests, like strangers had peeled back layers of their life and left fingerprints everywhere. Evidence markers dotted the hallway. A uniformed officer stood by the door, murmuring into a radio. Spencer sat wrapped in a blanket on the couch, knees tucked to his chest, eyes glassy and far away. Abraham Lehman was gone, handcuffed, taken. His voice, his presence, ripped out of the house like a rotten beam. It should have felt like relief. Instead, Marcus felt the weight of something opening, wider, deeper than he'd imagined. An officer with tired eyes approached him. Mr. Turner, she said gently, we're going to need to ask you some more questions. Marcus nodded. Anything. She gestured toward the spilled contents of the duffel bag, now sealed into evidence bags. That camera, she said. It's not new. Marcus's throat tightened. What do you mean? We pulled metadata, she said. It's been used before. Different locations. Different dates. Marcus stared at her. Different homes? She didn't answer directly. Your father-in-law isn't acting alone. The words hit like a physical blow. Rachel arrived an hour later. She came in fast, hair loose, face pale, eyes wild with fear. She rushed to Spencer first, dropping to her knees and pulling him into her arms. My baby, she whispered, rocking him. Oh my God, my baby. Spencer didn't cry. He didn't cling. He just sat there, stiff, eyes unfocused. Rachel looked up at Marcus then. For a second, there was gratitude there, raw and desperate. Then it shattered. This can't be real, she said. This can't be happening. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. He didn't know which words would land without breaking something. They said, Dad. Rachel swallowed hard. They said my father. I know, Marcus said softly. She stood abruptly, pacing. There has to be some mistake. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Rachel, Marcus said. They found evidence. She turned on him. Evidence can be misinterpreted. Rachel, you hated him, she snapped. You always did. Marcus flinched. That's not fair. She laughed once, sharp and hysterical. So now he's part of some conspiracy. An officer cleared her throat. Mrs. Turner, we've identified other individuals connected to the recordings. Rachel froze. Other who? The officer glanced at Marcus, then back to Rachel. Members of your extended family, including Stanley Lehman. Rachel's face drained of color. My uncle. The officer nodded. Yes, ma'am. Rachel staggered back like she'd been struck. She pressed a hand to her mouth, shaking her head. No. Stanley is, she couldn't finish. Marcus watched the woman he loved unravel in real time. Decades of memories, holidays, birthdays, laughter collapsed into something poisoned. Later, after the officers left, after Spencer fell asleep, clutching Marcus's sleeve, Rachel stood in the kitchen, staring at nothing. I don't know what's real anymore, she said quietly. Marcus leaned against the counter. We'll figure it out. She turned to him slowly. I can't do this, she said. Not right now. He felt the words before he understood them. What are you saying? I need space, Rachel said, voice thin. I need to think. She gestured helplessly. Everything is too loud. Marcus stared at her. You want me to leave? Just for a little while, she said quickly. Until I can breathe. He felt something crack inside him. Not anger, not even betrayal. Just exhaustion. I saved our son, he said quietly. I know, she whispered. Tears spilled down her face. That's what makes this worse. He packed a bag that night. He kissed Spencer's forehead, whispered promises he wasn't sure he could keep, and left the house that no longer felt like home. The threats started the next morning. The first was a voicemail. No number. You should have minded your business. Marcus deleted it. The second came by email. No sender. This ends badly for people like you. He didn't tell Rachel. By the third message, this one slipped under his motel room door, printed and folded neatly. Marcus understood something with absolute clarity. Someone was watching him. Someone wanted him quiet. And whoever they were bigger than Abraham. It had never been just him. Chapter 6. The People You Can't Trust. Marcus learned who not to trust the hard way. It started with a meeting that should have reassured him. He sat across from a prosecutor in a beige office that smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. The man spoke calmly, confidently, flipping through a thin file as if it contained nothing more alarming than a parking violation. We're reviewing the evidence, the prosecutor said. But these things take time. Marcus leaned forward. My son named names. The prosecutor didn't look up. Children are suggestible. Marcus felt the room tilt. There's video equipment. Metadata. A timeline. Yes, the man said, finally meeting Marcus's eyes. And there are powerful people involved. You need to understand how careful we have to be. Careful. That word followed Marcus out of the building and down the steps into the daylight, where it curdled into something darker. By the end of the week, Abraham's arraignment had been delayed. Evidence requests stalled. A judge recused himself without explanation. Another took his place and immediately sealed parts of the file. Marcus started making calls. Some weren't returned. Others ended abruptly the moment he mentioned the Lehman name. One detective he'd spoken to earlier suddenly couldn't recall their conversation. Another advised Marcus, quietly, almost kindly, to stop pushing. For your own sake, the man had said. That night, Marcus sat alone in his motel room. Legal pads spread across the bed, connecting dots that shouldn't have existed. Property records, shell companies, trusts layered inside trusts. The Lehman Family Trust appeared everywhere, owning properties in 3 states, donating to judicial campaigns, funding community programs that intersected uncomfortably with where certain incidents had occurred. Marcus stared at the pattern until his eyes burned. A knock sounded at the door. His body went rigid. He checked the peephole. A woman stood outside, mid-40s, hair pulled back, posture straight. She held up a badge, not pressed to the glass, not rushed. "I'm Officer Dolores Kramer," she said through the door. "I think you should talk to me." Marcus hesitated, then opened it a crack. She didn't step forward, didn't look past him. She waited. "I don't have much time," she said, "and I don't want this conversation on record." Marcus studied her face, calm, tired, resolute. "Come in." She stepped inside and immediately set her phone face down on the dresser. "I'm not here officially," she said. "If anyone asks, I never was." Marcus folded his arms. "Why?" "Because some of the people assigned to this case are dirty," she said simply. His breath caught. "How dirty?" "Dirty enough that files disappear. Dirty enough that victims get blamed. Dirty enough that good cops get transferred if they ask the wrong questions." She met his gaze. "I don't plan on being transferred." Marcus sat heavily on the bed. "Then help me." She nodded once. "I already am." She pulled out a folder. Inside were copies, documents Marcus recognized but hadn't been able to access. "The trust funds more than properties," Kramer said. "It funds people." Marcus flipped through the pages. Judges, prosecutors, law enforcement foundations. "Jesus," he whispered. "There's more," she said. "But you can't do this alone." "Who can I trust?" Marcus asked. Kramer hesitated. "I can give you names. One of them is Luther Bass." The name rang a bell. "The FBI agent." "Former," she corrected. "He quit after an internal investigation went nowhere." She scribbled a number on a scrap of paper. "If anyone can follow money without getting bought, it's him." She stood to leave. "Be careful who you talk to next." After she left, Marcus stared at the number for a long time before dialing. Luther Bass's voice was gravelly, suspicious. "You have 60 seconds. Marcus told him everything. There was a long pause on the other end. "Yeah," Bass said finally. "I was wondering when this would surface again." "Again." "I'll meet you," Bass said. "Public place. Tomorrow." The diner smelled like grease and old coffee. Luther Bass looked exactly like Marcus expected, older, broad-shouldered, eyes sharp with a kind of permanent disappointment. "You're in deeper than you know," Bass said after listening. "This isn't a local problem." Marcus felt a chill. "How far does it go?" "Far enough that I stopped trusting badges," Bass said, "and started trusting paper trails." They spread documents across the table, ignoring the waitress's curious looks. "This trust," Bass said, tapping the name, "has fingerprints everywhere. And not just yours." A shadow fell across the booth. "Marcus Turner?" Marcus looked up. The man standing there was in his early 40s, wearing a rumpled jacket and a press badge clipped to his pocket. "I'm Albert Reed," he said. "I think our family shares a secret." Marcus stiffened. "I didn't call you." "I know," Reed said quietly. "But when Abraham's name resurfaced, I started digging again." "Again," Marcus echoed. Reed slid into the booth without asking. "My daughter," he said, voice tight, "was hurt years ago. Different state. Same trust." Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. Reed met his eyes. "They buried it." "I didn't." Luther Bass leaned back. "Well," he said grimly, "looks like we're done pretending this is small." Marcus looked at the 2 men across from him, an ex-agent and a journalist bound by loss, and felt something settle into place. This wasn't just about Spencer. This was bigger than a family, bigger than a city. The network they were staring at didn't stop at state lines. It was national. Chapter 7, $2 million. Marcus found out Abraham had made bail from a notification he wasn't supposed to receive. It came from a court clerk he'd once helped years ago, one of the few people still willing to speak to him off the record. "He's out," the message read. "Be careful." Marcus stared at the screen until the words blurred. He was sitting in his car outside the motel, engine off, hands resting uselessly on the steering wheel. For a long moment, he didn't breathe. Out. He had known it was possible. Luther had warned him. Dolores had all but promised it. And still, the reality of it felt unreal, like gravity briefly letting go. Marcus drove without destination for nearly an hour before pulling into the parking lot of a nearly empty office complex. He sat there, listening to the tick of cooling metal, forcing his pulse to slow. His phone buzzed again. "We should talk," the message said. No name, just a location. A cafe downtown. Public. Neutral. Marcus almost deleted it. Instead, he replied with a single word. "When?" The cafe was bright and over-air-conditioned, full of glass and pale wood, and people who looked like they had never once been afraid of the floor collapsing beneath them. Marcus chose a table near the window, his back to the wall, eyes constantly moving. Abraham arrived 10 minutes late. He looked fine. That was what struck Marcus first. Not shaken, not frantic, clean-shaven, neatly dressed, calm. He smiled when he saw Marcus. "Marcus," Abraham said, sliding into the chair across from him as if this were an old habit. "You look tired." Marcus didn't respond. Abraham folded his hands on the table. "You know, jail is very unpleasant for men my age." Marcus leaned forward. "You shouldn't be anywhere near me." "And yet," Abraham said mildly, "here we are." Marcus's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "Say what you came to say." Abraham studied him with open curiosity. "You really don't understand how this works, do you?" "Try me." Abraham sighed, almost indulgent. "What happened in your house was unfortunate." Emotions ran high. Mistakes were made. Marcus's chair scraped loudly as he stood halfway up. "You don't get to sit down," Abraham said softly. Marcus froze. Abraham's smile never wavered. "If you cause a scene, you'll regret it. Sit." Marcus sat. Abraham nodded, pleased. "Good. Now listen carefully." He leaned in just enough to be heard. "I can make your life very difficult. Professionally. Personally. You've already tried," Marcus said. "And you survived." Abraham agreed. "Barely. But survival is not the same as winning." Marcus stared at him. "Stay away from my son." Abraham's eyes flicked, just for a fraction of a second. "That depends." Marcus felt something hot and dangerous rise in his chest. "Depends on what?" "On whether you understand leverage," Abraham said. "Custody is flexible. Allegations can be arranged. Courts are sympathetic to grandparents who appear concerned." Marcus's hands curled into fists under the table. "You touch him." Abraham raised a finger. "I don't have to. That's the beauty of systems." He leaned back, satisfied. "You could lose everything, Marcus. Your license, your reputation, your child." Marcus stood again, fully this time. "This conversation is over." Abraham didn't stop him. He just smiled wider. "It doesn't have to end badly." Marcus walked out without looking back. The fixer contacted him that night. No threats, no drama, just a call. "Mr. Turner," the voice said smoothly, "I represent parties interested in resolving this situation quietly." "I'm not interested," Marcus said. "I think you are," the man replied. $2 million. Marcus laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You're insane." $2 million, the man repeated calmly. "Clean, legal, discretion assured." "For what?" Marcus asked, though he already knew. "Your cooperation," the man said. "Your silence. Your willingness to let certain matters conclude naturally." Marcus gripped the phone harder. "You're asking me to abandon my son." "We're asking you to protect him," the fixer corrected. "From a long, painful process." Marcus closed his eyes. He saw Spencer's face the first morning he'd begged him not to go to work. The way his small hands had trembled. The relief when Marcus said he'd stay. "What happens if I say no?" Marcus asked. There was a pause. Then you become a problem. Marcus opened his eyes. And problems get solved. Yes, the fixer said pleasantly. Marcus felt fear then, real, visceral fear. Not for himself. For Spencer. For how far this could go. Think about it, the man said. You have 24 hours. The call ended. Marcus sat on the edge of the motel bed in the dark, phone still pressed to his ear. His mind raced through possibilities, protection orders, relocation, exposure. None of them felt sufficient. All of them carried risk. $2 million. Enough to disappear. Enough to build walls and distance and safety. Enough to pretend none of this ever happened. Marcus stood and walked into the bathroom, gripping the sink, staring at his reflection. He looked older, harder, like someone standing at the edge of a line he couldn't step back from. He thought of the evidence, the other victims. The names Albert had spoken with quiet fury. The patterns Luther had traced across maps and spreadsheets. Silence wouldn't just protect Abraham. It would protect everyone like him. Marcus picked up the phone and dialed the number back. I've thought about it, Marcus said when the fixer answered. No, Marcus said. There was a long silence. You understand what this means? The fixer said finally. Yes, Marcus replied. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone and let out a slow breath. Refusal didn't make him safe, but silence would have made him complicit. And Marcus Turner had already chosen his side. Chapter 8, they took my son. Marcus was 10 minutes late. It shouldn't have mattered. It was a Tuesday. Pickup was usually chaotic, kids spilling out of doors, parents double-parked, teachers waving people along. 10 minutes was nothing. Today, it was everything. He pulled into the school lot and felt it before he saw it, the wrongness in the air. A police cruiser sat near the entrance. A white sedan idled by the curb. Two unfamiliar adults stood near the office doors, talking to the principal. Marcus parked crookedly and got out. Spencer Turner, a woman said as Marcus approached. She was in a navy blazer, clipboard tucked under her arm. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm with Child Protective Services. Marcus stopped. Where's my son? She glanced at the clipboard. We need to speak with you first. Where is he? Marcus repeated, louder. The principal stepped in quickly. Mr. Turner, please, I want to see my son, Marcus said. His heart was already hammering, a dull roar in his ears. Now, the woman exchanged a look with the man beside her, a tall figure in a gray suit. He cleared his throat. There have been allegations. Marcus laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. Allegations of what? Emotional instability, the woman said smoothly. Inappropriate behavior. Creating an unsafe environment. Marcus stared at her. You're talking about me. We're talking about concerns raised by multiple parties, she said. Marcus felt the floor tilt. Who raised them? She didn't answer. Where's my son? Marcus demanded again. The man in the gray suit gestured toward the white sedan. Spencer has been placed in temporary protective custody. Marcus turned slowly. Abraham stood by the open back door of the car. Beside him, older, heavier, face-tight with practice concern, was Stanley Lehman. Marcus's vision tunneled. You don't have the right, Marcus said, walking toward them. You don't get to take him. Abraham smiled, small and calm. This is for his own good. Spencer sat in the back seat, backpack clutched to his chest. His eyes locked on Marcus through the open door. Daddy, he cried. Marcus broke into a run. Hands grabbed his arms. Sir, the CPS woman snapped. You need to calm down. Marcus twisted free. Spencer, don't let them. Abraham shut the car door. The sound was final. Sealing. Marcus slammed his hands against the window. Open it. Spencer pressed his palms to the glass, sobbing. Daddy, please. Abraham leaned close, his voice low enough that only Marcus could hear. You should have taken the money. Marcus roared a raw, animal sound and lunged again. This time, arms wrapped around his chest, holding him back as the car pulled away from the curb. Daddy! Spencer screamed, his face shrinking in the distance. And then he was gone. The parking lot spun. Marcus sank to his knees on the hot asphalt, breath tearing out of him in jagged pieces. He pressed his fist to his eyes like he could force the image away. They took my son. A hand touched his shoulder. Mr. Turner, the principal said weakly. Please Please understand. Marcus shrugged her off and staggered to his feet. Call your lawyer, he said hoarsely. You're going to need one. He fumbled for his phone, fingers numb, and dialed Luther. They took him, Marcus said when Luther answered. CPS. Abraham. Stanley. Where? Luther demanded. I don't know, Marcus said, panic clawing up his throat. I don't know. He stumbled to his car, hands shaking so badly he dropped the keys twice before getting the door open. He collapsed into the driver's seat and gripped the wheel, gasping. Think. Spencer's watch. Marcus sucked in a breath and opened the app with trembling fingers. For a terrifying second, it didn't load. The screen stayed blank, unresponsive. Come on, Marcus whispered. Come on, please. The map flickered to life. A dot pulsed on the screen, moving. Marcus let out a broken sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. I see you, he whispered. I've got you. He slammed the car into gear. As he pulled out of the school lot, his phone buzzed, an unknown number. He ignored it. Then another, and another. A text appeared. Stop. Marcus deleted it. Another followed immediately. You're making this worse. Marcus pressed harder on the accelerator, eyes locked on the pulsing dot inching along the highway. He called Luther back. I have a location. Send it, Luther said. I'm on my way. Marcus sent the pin and merged into traffic. Every red light a personal betrayal. His mind raced with images, Spencer alone, frightened, believing he'd been abandoned. I'm coming, Marcus said aloud, as if Spencer could hear him. I'm coming. The dot on the map kept moving. So did Marcus. And somewhere between fear and fury, between desperation and resolve, the truth crystallized into something unbreakable. They had taken his son, and he was going to take him back. The chase began. Chapter 9, the rest stop. The GPS dot pulsed closer with every mile, a tiny heartbeat on Marcus's phone screen that made his own pulse pound in time. The road stretched straight and empty for miles, flanked by fields and forests. The kind of isolation that made you feel invisible and dangerously exposed. Marcus gripped the steering wheel as Luther sat in the passenger seat, eyes flicking constantly between the map and the horizon. They're stopping up ahead, Luther said, voice tight. Rest stop, maybe a bathroom break. Or something else. Marcus's jaw tightened. No talking. I just want Spencer back. Marcus, Luther said, eyes narrowing, stay sharp. They got leverage. And weapons. The highway exit came into view, marked by a lone, flickering sign. Lights from the rest stop painted long streaks across the asphalt in the fading morning sun. Marcus slowed slightly, but kept enough speed to remain confident he could block or react. A black SUV and the white sedan, the one Spencer had been taken in, sat parked at the far end of the lot. Abraham leaned against the hood, calm as if this were a picnic, Stanley pacing beside him, eyes darting, calculating. Marcus felt a cold surge in his chest. His hands gripped the wheel tighter. There he is. Luther tapped his shoulder. FBI's on the way, Marcus. But it's still minutes. Marcus exhaled through his teeth. Minutes too long. He parked at the far side of the lot, leaving space for a quick approach, and they both got out. Marcus crouched low, staying behind a lamppost, phone in hand tracking Spencer's dot. He could see the boy now, standing near the SUV, backpack clutched, face pale and terrified. Abraham noticed them first. He smirked, eyes cold. You're persistent, he said. I admire that. Marcus didn't reply. His heart pounded, each beat a drum of fury and fear. Let my son go, Abraham. Abraham tilted his head. Or what? Marcus stepped forward, voice taut with fury. Or this ends right now. Abraham's smirk widened. You don't understand what leverage means, Marcus. One wrong move, and he didn't finish. Because the next moment, he pulled a small pistol from his jacket and leveled it directly at Spencer. Time froze. Spencer's lips trembled. Daddy. Marcus felt a scream rise in his throat, but it didn't come out. Instead, his body moved before his mind could catch up. He lunged, tackling Abraham with every ounce of strength he had. The gun discharged once, the shot ringing out like thunder, but missing, hitting nothing but asphalt behind them. Chaos erupted. Luther dove at Stanley, wrestling him to the ground. Abraham struggled under Marcus's weight, fists swinging, boots scraping on concrete. Spencer screamed. The boy's cry shredded Marcus's heart, but steeled his resolve. "Don't touch him," Marcus shouted, punching Abraham across the face. "I said stay away from my son." Abraham growled, twisted, aiming the gun at Marcus, but his hands were clumsy under the sudden onslaught. Marcus grabbed it, yanking it sideways. The metallic clang rang out as Abraham stumbled backward, nearly falling onto the hood of the SUV. Stanley was shouting, trying to pull Abraham off balance, but Luther was relentless, holding him down. Spencer froze in the middle, eyes wide, tears streaking down his cheeks. "Daddy!" Marcus turned, grabbed Spencer, pulling him close. "I've got you. I've got you." The sound of sirens shattered the tense air. FBI agents in tactical gear emerged from behind the trees, moving swiftly, weapons drawn. "Drop it!" FBI, one shouted. Abraham's eyes flicked from Marcus to the approaching agents, then back to the boy. Panic flashed across his face. Marcus didn't let go of Spencer. "You're done," he said quietly, firmly. Abraham's fight collapsed. The pistol clattered to the asphalt as agents surrounded him. He raised his hands, chest heaving, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Stanley was cuffed quickly by agents who had already subdued him. Marcus held Spencer against his chest, rocking him gently. "It's okay, buddy. It's okay." Spencer sobbed into Marcus's shoulder. They were going to, "I know," Marcus whispered, kissing the top of his son's head. "I know, but it's over. You're safe now. I promise." FBI agents secured the scene, taking Abraham and Stanley away. The black SUV and white sedan were searched and impounded. Agents asked Marcus to give statements, but he barely heard them, his focus entirely on Spencer. "Daddy," Spencer whispered, fingers clutching Marcus's shirt. "I was so scared." "I know," Marcus said, brushing wet hair from Spencer's forehead. "I know, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." One agent approached, notebook in hand. "Mr. Turner, you did exactly the right thing. We got here just in time." Marcus nodded, his arms still around Spencer. "It shouldn't have had to come to this." "No," the agent agreed. "But you saved him." Spencer peeked up at Marcus, still shaking. They were going to take me away forever," he whispered. Marcus's throat tightened. "Not on my watch. Not ever." Luther came up beside them, wiping sweat and dirt from his brow. "Good work, Marcus. That was close." "Close," Marcus echoed, still holding Spencer like he could keep him tethered to life itself. "You have no idea how close." The boy's small hands found Marcus's, squeezing tightly. "Daddy, I'm right here, buddy." "Always," Marcus said. The sirens faded behind them, the agents coordinating as Abraham and Stanley were loaded into separate vehicles. This time, there would be no escape, no manipulation, no loophole to exploit. Marcus looked down at Spencer, whose tears were slowing, whose breathing was finally even. Relief and exhaustion washed over him in a wave so intense he nearly collapsed to the asphalt. "Are you okay, baby?" he asked gently. Spencer nodded slowly, clinging tightly. "I'm okay with you." Marcus felt a warmth settle deep in his chest, a quiet satisfaction amidst the chaos. Justice momentarily had caught up. The FBI agents moved Abraham into the back of a tactical vehicle. No smiles, no theatrics, no bargaining. This time, Marcus knew the man would never reach his son again. Standing there, with Spencer wrapped in his arms, Marcus realized something he had already known but never fully accepted. This was just the beginning. The road ahead would be long. But right now, he had won. And that victory, fragile and raw, felt worth every second of terror that had led them here. Spencer pressed his face into Marcus's chest, whispering, "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too," Marcus said, voice breaking. More than anything. And in the fading sunlight of the remote rest stop, surrounded by the chaos and sirens and the aftermath of fear, Marcus Turner finally held his son safe. Abraham Lehman was arrested again, this time with no escape. Chapter 10, Safe. The morning light spilled into the Turner household in a way it hadn't for months. Warm, steady, and promising. Marcus stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching Spencer chase a wayward butterfly across the lawn. It was quiet, ordinary, and perfect. The kind of moment he had fought, clawed, and nearly died to protect. Behind him, the front door opened softly. Rachel stepped out, her hair tied back neatly, wearing a light jacket and a tentative smile. Marcus turned, offering one of his own, simple, unspoken. No words were needed. After everything, gestures carried more weight than promises. Spencer skidded to a halt mid-laugh, kicking up a small cloud of grass and dirt, and ran straight to Marcus. "Daddy, throw it," he shouted, holding up the worn baseball. Marcus crouched, eyes locking on the small figure. "All right, buddy. Ready, ready," Spencer replied, bouncing on the balls of his feet. The first throw was gentle, a soft arc that landed in Spencer's mitt. He squealed and ran back, already counting for the next throw. Marcus smiled, a full, unguarded smile that he hadn't felt in years. Behind them, Rachel leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed loosely. "He's healing," she said quietly, almost to herself. Marcus glanced over his shoulder. "We're all healing. Slowly, but we're moving forward." She nodded, voice soft. "It's still hard, seeing all that he went through, and knowing how much we all missed." Marcus shrugged, catching another throw from Spencer. "We can't change the past, but we can protect the future." Spencer raced back, glove held high. "Daddy, overhand this time." Marcus laughed, winding up and letting the ball fly. The connection was seamless, the rhythm of father and son, trust and joy rebuilding itself throw by throw. Inside, news channels played clips over and over, headlines scrolling across the screen. Lehman Network dismantled. 23 arrested in multi-state child abuse ring. Assets of Lehman Family Trust seized. Corruption exposed. Federal investigation confirms judicial and law enforcement complicity. Marcus had watched the press coverage days earlier, long before this morning's calm. He remembered sitting with Luther and Albert, meticulously releasing evidence, ensuring every detail, every photograph, every record of the abuse saw the light of day. The nation had watched in stunned horror as the network collapsed. Abraham Lehman had received 4 life sentences. He would never touch another child. Prison had been the end of him, swift and irreversible. Other conspirators received similarly long sentences. Victims finally saw justice. But justice was not revenge. Justice was safety. And for Marcus, that meant Spencer breathing freely in the sunlight. "Daddy," Spencer's call brought him back to the present. Another throw. Marcus let the ball sail high, catching it easily as Spencer ran back, triumphant. Rachel stepped closer to the edge of the porch. "I never got to say thank you, not just for saving Spencer, but for everything, for being relentless, for not giving up." Marcus didn't look at her. He didn't need to. He kept his eyes on Spencer. "I didn't do it alone," he said, "but I did it because I couldn't do otherwise. That's all a father should do." She nodded. Tears brimmed in her eyes, not from fear but relief. They had come through the worst of it, together, even after the fractures and the anger. Spencer sprinted past, tiny legs pumping furiously. "Again. Throw it again, Daddy." Marcus threw, high and precise. Spencer's laughter rang through the yard like wind chimes in spring. Each throw, each catch, a stitch in the torn fabric of their lives. Later, they sat on the grass, knees bent, baseball resting between them. Marcus rubbed Spencer's hair, eyes following the sunlight glinting off his son's freckles. "You remember the scary stuff, don't you?" Marcus asked softly. Spencer's small face nodded, serious. "Yeah, but it's okay now, 'cause you're here." Marcus swallowed, heart heavy with the weight of everything they had endured. "I'm always here, buddy. Always." Rachel came down beside them. Kneeling so, she was level with Spencer. She placed a hand on his small shoulder. "And we're all here, together. Safe." Spencer's eyes lit up, the weight of past fear lifting with each reassuring gesture. He leaned into both of them, a small, perfect triangle of trust. Marcus stood finally, offering a hand to Rachel. She took it without hesitation. They shared a quiet moment. No need for words, no need for explanations. The air between them carried a lifetime of reconciliation, a promise to move forward, and a recognition of the battles they had survived. Later that afternoon, as the sun began to dip low, Marcus watched Spencer toss the ball high in the sky, arms outstretched, fearless. He realized that moments like this, ordinary and miraculous, were the true victory. Not the arrests, not the headlines, but the ability to live without fear together. Marcus bent to scoop up another ball, and Spencer's tiny voice called out, "Daddy, throw it farther this time." He smiled, winding up with care, his eyes on the boy he had fought to save. The ball arced gracefully, and Spencer ran to catch it, triumphant and free. Rachel's hand found his, squeezing gently. "We made it," she said softly. Marcus squeezed back. "Yeah, we made it." Spencer turned, arms full of baseballs, and grinned. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too," Marcus said, voice catching. More than anything, as they played, the sunlight stretching long across the yard, Marcus knew this was more than a moment. It was a beginning. The trauma, the fear, the corruption, they were behind them now. The future belonged to laughter, to trust, and to sunlight. And in that quiet, sunlit yard, with Spencer safe in his arms and Rachel by his side, Marcus Turner understood what he had always known deep down. A father believed his child, and that made all the difference.